we have to change the culture of our institutions, right? And part of this is I've been trying to change the culture both in the public and private sector. So just as a general thing, right, it starts with each and every single one of us. We're going to have to stand up and call out bad behavior, right? Some of it is people with lack of education, and some of it people with malicious intent, right? So we're going to have to come together and change the way we act and change the way other people behave. Now, I try to change also institutions. So, not just in regards to sexual harassment, but we don't have a society that respects everybody, right? Today we have, and it happens with both Democrats and Republicans, we have an arrogance of privilege and abuse of power.
Yes.
And so we have to make sure that that's not permissible, right? And you have it with elected officials, you have it with Hollywood, you have it with the technology community. Some of you know that I've long tried to change the way we govern. So not just the public sector. Some of you know I sit on the boards of CalPERS and CalSTRS, the nation's two largest public pension plans. And I've tried to get more diversity in private sector leadership, right? Because oftentimes, for too much, we know that money drives behavior. And people will only focus on who are the most powerful and who have money. And frankly, we know it corrupts politics. It corrupts our system. There's a reason why I'm the only Democrat statewide who's challenged Wells Fargo. Right? Wells Fargo's put a lot of money into Democrat and Republicans' pockets. And it silences too many. So early on in my tenure at CalPERS and CalSTRS, I called for more people of color to serve on corporate boards, right? If you want to eliminate that discrimination, right? If you don't want to witness more Charlottesvilles, if you don't want to see more racial injustice, right? You need people investing in people throughout. The next year, I called for CalPERS and CalSTRS to work aggressively to put more women on corporate boards, right? When you have Harvey Weinstein, when you have all-male boards, or when you have the old cosmetics companies, where all the board but one would be females, with all great respect to males, right? And that includes me. I don't know much about lipstick or foundation. Right? We know certain techniques, right? But you ought to be understanding where your marketplace is, and it can't be all the old boys clubs who went to the same private schools, boarding schools, together. And then later on, I called for more members of the LGBTI communities on corporate boards. And then 2 years ago, when I was at Dave Jones and Betty and I were speaking at different panels on the United Nations, and we met with the permanent ambassador of France. I asked Betty, right, because I'd like to get my colleagues involved. I said, we need more board members on corporate institutions who have climate change risk expertise. So let's try to push for more board members. We're going to try to encourage their companies to do the right thing, right? Because over a decade ago, I went back to Dallas, Texas to challenge ExxonMobil on their climate change denial. And then specifically in this race, I'm the only candidate who's put out a sexual harassment policy. Specific policies. And truthfully, right, some of you were unhappy with me when I called out and I called for the resignation for certain Democratic elected officials. Right? I didn't call it willy-nilly. Right? These are people I know. Right? But when you hear from people, you hear from colleagues, when you hear from people who they went to college with, right? If we're going to be the beacon of light and hope, and if we're going to talk about this, then we got to model that behavior. So that's what I've done.